Or affirm the evidence you're going to provide in the hearing of this case is going to be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated. Give your attention, Ms. Hart.
I'm Billy Hancock. I'm Chief of Police of the City of Ocilla.
And how long have you been Chief of Police in Ocilla?
29 years and 10 months.
Are you what we would refer to as a post-certified law enforcement officer?
Yes.
And I take it based on the 10 months that you're counting down your days for retirement?
Seems to be.
Okay. I want to direct your attention to October of 2005. Were you Chief of Police at that time?
Yes.
And in October of 2005, how many officers would you have had working for you at Ocilla Police Department?
12.
Were those patrol officers, investigators, a little bit of everything?
We only have one investigator. The rest were patrol. And that was also including myself.
That was going to be my next question. With a department of that size, are there occasions in which the chief actually responds himself to calls of this nature?
Yes.
Prior to October 24th of 2005, did you know Tara Grinstead?
Yes, I did. She was a local school teacher, history.
Did you know someone by the name of Marcus Harper?
Yes, he was a former police officer for the Ocilla Police Department.
Do you know if those two ever had a romantic relationship?
Yes.
And were they dating at the time he was working for you at the police department?
Yes.
Now, on October 24th of 2005, when you responded to the house, did you have any personal knowledge as to whether or not they were still in a relationship?
I did not. I didn't know for sure.
How was it that you went over to Tara's house on October 24th of 2005?
I received a telephone call from Joe Portier, her next door neighbor, about 10 minutes till 9 on that day.
And how do you remember what time it was?
I'm not sure. Maybe I wrote it down or just remembered. I mean, nothing earth-shattering that made me remember that.
And when Mr. Portier called you, was it on a cell phone, a house phone, a work phone?
I believe he called me from his cell phone. I'm not 100% certain.
And what about you? Did he call you on a cell phone?
I was on the cell phone, yes.
Where were you when he called you?
I believe I was standing in the parking lot of the Ocilla Police Department.
What did you do when you received the phone call about Tara?
I drove to her house.
How long did it take you to get to her house at the time you had a phone call?
We were 6 or 7 blocks away, so not very long.
Had you ever been inside Tara Grinstead's house before that day?
Not that I remember.
And when you arrived on scene, who else was there besides Mr. Portier?
There was Larry and Dina Harper and Mr. Joe Portier.
Do you recall if Myrtle Portier was present or not?
She was not there. I understood she had been there, but she was not there. That I remember.
That goes to my next question. When you arrived on scene, what was your understanding as to whether or not other persons had already been in the house that night?
I just remember that he told me that Larry and Dina was at the house and that she had not shown up for work.
Who had not shown up for work?
Tara had not shown up for work.
Did you enter into her residence that day?
I did.
Who was with you, if anyone, when you went inside the residence?
We all three met in the front living room.
Who's the three that went in?
Myself, Larry, and Dina.
What about Joe Portier? Where was he?
Joe Portier was there.
And so I guess let me ask.
That's 4 of us.
Well, was anyone in the house when you got there, or did they all meet you outside?
I remember that Joe was on the front porch. I think that Miss Dina may have already been in the house, and I'm not sure about Mr. Larry if he was standing outside or if he'd come on in. I know that we all met in the living room.
When you all witnessed the living room, what did you do, if anything?
Just gathered information as to the whereabouts of Tara, what they already knew.
Did they seem to
Not that I remember. I know that they knew that she had not shown up for school, and that Joe told me at some point that maybe there was a beauty pageant on Saturday, and that was the last he had seen of her.
Now, did you ever see any evidence or anything that jumped out to you as evidence in the case when you were at Miss Grinstead's house?
I remember pulling up. Her car was parked under the carport. I remember getting out, walking up to the front of the house, and seeing the glove in the yard.
Okay. May I approach, Judge? Sure. I'm going to show you what's in Marked States Exhibit 44 and ask you if you recognize that.
Yes.
How do you recognize States 44?
That's the glove from that day?
Now, that picture, did you take that yourself?
No.
However, is that a true and accurate depiction of where that glove was located when you saw it on October 24th, 2005?
Yes.
Did you ever touch the glove?
No.
Let's sit this up. Judge, at this time I will tender in evidence States Exhibit 44.
The objection. No objection. Think that's the view without objection. States 44.
May I publish that to the jury, Judge?
Yes.
Okay. Before I do that, let's look at States 40. Chief, can you tell us what we're looking at in States 40?
That's the front of Tara's house.
Now, you just mentioned pulling up. Do you recall where it was that you parked when you got to Tara's house that morning?
I remember, to the best of my memory, of pulling up in front of the house, almost like I would have been seeing what you see there.
Okay, so you would have...
I don't think I pulled in the driveway. I pulled down in the front of the house on the road.
So, am I understanding you to say that essentially you think that the angle we're looking at in States 40 is consistent with having been taken from about where you were parked? Is that...
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So when you approached her residence, did you walk over up the driveway, or did you just walk through the yard?
I think I walked through the yard. I remember walking up the pathway, seeing the glove pretty close to what I think was the last paver in the yard, about 2 feet off to the right of it.
Okay. And again, is that the glove that you've identified in States 44?
Yes.
Okay. We're also going to look at States 41 that's already been tendered into evidence. Do you recognize what's depicted there?
It's the same thing, just a different shot.
Now, you talked about walking through the yard. Do you recall if it would have been... Sorry, it's backwards for me. So would it have been from this direction, or would it have been from over here?
The first direction that you pointed.
Okay. And so when you walked up, you said you noticed the glove. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
Okay. But I want to make sure I ask this. You didn't collect the glove?
No, I did not.
Do you know who collected the glove?
Bill Bars.
Now, at the time that you arrived on the scene, what did you know about why you'd been called that day?
The only thing I really knew that she had not shown up for work, and that she was not at the residence.
Okay. Do you recall whether or not Miss Grinstead had a cat?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall if you ever saw the cat that morning?
I believe that Joe was either petting the cat or putting the cat down. I think I remember the front door actually being open as I walked up to the house.
Do you recall if you saw a cell phone that was located in the house?
Yes. After we spoke in the front of the living room there, I did walk through the house, eventually making my way to the back bedroom, which was Tara's. I noticed that the cell phone was located on the nightstand beside her.
Do you recall if it was, I apologize, Chief, do you recall if it was plugged in charging or not?
I do. Well, I remember a cord hanging from it. I do not remember checking it to see if it was plugged in the wall. I didn't do that.
Do you recall if Tara had an alarm clock or a clock near her bedside table?
Yes, there was a clock that was kind of on the floor between the nightstand and the bed, maybe a little closer to the bed, if I remember correctly.
I'm going to show you what's already been admitted as State's Exhibit 25 and ask you, is that consistent with what the bedroom looked like that morning?
To the best of my memory, yes.
Okay. And the clock that you're talking about that was on the floor, which side of the bed would that have been on?
Be on the same side as the nightstand, if I remember correctly.
So over here?
Yes, closer to the bed, though.
And was it plugged in, best of your recollection?
Yes, I think it was.
When you were there, did Mr. Portier give you anything that he had found at the residence that morning?
When he and I, after the brief time I was in the house, he and I walked outside to look around the house. While walking, I remember him giving me a business card that he had said was in the front door or on the front door. That business card belonged to Heath Dykes.
Did you know who Heath Dykes was at the time?
Yes.
How did you know who Heath Dykes was?
I remember him from a previous incident between involving Tara.
Okay. Now, to be clear, that previous incident, did you actually respond to Tara's home in relation to that incident?
No, I did not.
Did one of your officers respond?
Yes.
And any information that you have about that particular incident, would that be first-hand knowledge or something you heard from somebody else?
Something heard from somebody else.
However, having spoken with your officers or read the report, is that where you had heard Heath's name before?
Yes.
Did you actually collect that card from Mr. Portier yourself?
No, I did not. I told him to hang on to it, that somebody else would be getting the information from him at a later time.
Now, at any point, were any other law enforcement agencies called in to assist in this case?
Yes. After Joe and I walked through the yard, I remember calling for Detective Bars to come to the scene.
And you referenced him as Detective Bars. Who was that?
Detective Bill Bars.
Does he still work at the police department?
He does.
What's his current job role at the police
He's
department?
currently a school resource officer.
At the time, however, what was his job assignment?
He was detective.
And did he arrive on scene?
He did, just a few minutes after I called him.
How long had you been on scene when he got there?
Probably 10 minutes or less.
At the time that Detective Bars arrived on scene, were you involved in the investigation firsthand at that point?
No.
And then we talked about the GBI, I believe. Do you know when the GBI was called in?
I remember when Detective Bars came there, I remember him telling him what I had or what I knew of, and told him that we should call the GBI and so they could help us.
Now, did you, after that point, when the GBI is called in, essentially, who is the lead agency at that point?
They were.
And over the years that Ms. Grinstead was considered missing, any leads or anything that came in, would you have followed up on those yourself, or would you have turned those over to GBI?
those will be turned over to the GBI.
At this point, well, that's all the questions. Actually, I apologize. That's not all the questions I have. What county was the residence that Tara Grinstead lived at located?
Irwin County.
That's all the questions I have.
All right, Eddie Cross.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey,
So you saw the glove twice while you were on the scene.
yes, sir.
Once when you walked to the front door, and then once when you came back out onto the front porch.
That would be correct.
And as you told me, it stuck out like a sore thumb.
Yes,
It was pretty obvious.
it's very obvious.
When you entered the house, did you see any signs of forced entry on the front door?
I did not.
Did the house otherwise look normal to you?
Yes, based on what I was being told, I think it looked normal.
There was nothing that stuck out to you that would suggest it was a crime scene.
Nothing.
And you looked at the floor when you were inside the house, right?
I'm sure I did. I look down when I'm walking.
I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
You finish your answer, please.
No, I'm sure I look down. I will look down when I'm walking or observing with.
And did you, at any point, did you observe any kind of blood at all, whether new, fresh, old, any of
No.
that kind of thing on any of the floors?
I did not.
You and I talked at some point in your experience. You used a thicker plastic card to try to pry a lock, correct?
Yes,
And you told me that was much thicker than a credit card, right?
it's somewhat thicker. Yes, sir.
And you told me it took you a few minutes to pry the lock. Is that correct?
Yes,
So is it fair to assume it would take a lot longer to do if it was even possible with a regular credit card?
it is possible.
Now, at some point in November of 2005, you came to learn about a search that was conducted in Fitzgerald Farms Orchard, right?
Yes,
And you learned that from the Irwin County Sheriff's Office?
yes,
And from what I understand, you don't remember exactly who told you that, but it was from your office.
right.
And was it a deputy in the Sheriff's Office?
I believe so.
And without telling me what was said to you, was your understanding that there had been a report of a body being burned in Fitzgerald Farms?
And just I'm gonna object, I would absolutely call for hearsay. An understanding that he got from hearing someone else talk about this hearsay.
Well, I'm not asking him to disclose exactly what he said. As a law enforcement official, I'm asking him to report what was reported to him as part of the investigation.
All right, you get the final
Your Honor, that's not what the evidence was. He said he had heard it from a deputy, not that it was reported to him. But again, an understanding, as has been asked, is asking him for hearsay.
I sustain that objection.
So did you ever come to learn that a body had been reported burned?
And just I'm going to object again. Come to learn is going to be from hearsay. Unless he was present there himself, it's hearsay.
Unless he was present where?
Wherever he's talking about the location of Fitzgerald Farms. He's just said that you come to learn. Again, he would have learned that from hearsay, based on what's testified to.
Well, let me see if I can do it this way. Did you ever get a report from any Irwin County Sheriff's Office deputy or other employee reporting that there had been a body apparently burned in the Fitzgerald Farms orchard?
Do you mean like a? Are you asking me about a written report, or are you asking?
Yes, sir.
I do know now that there was a written report. I'm not sure I knew that then.
Did you ever report the information you received in November of 2005 to any other law enforcement official?
No, I don't remember that.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Any follow-up? Ms. Clark?
Yes, sir. When, in the days after Ms. Grinstead was reported missing, did press begin to come to the area?
Yes, lots.
And Based on the amount of publicity that this case got in those days and weeks, did that affect the number of tips and information you were receiving at the police department?
Yes, I would say so.
In your years in law enforcement, had you ever seen that many tips, information, psychics, whatever it was, giving information on a case in Ocilla, Georgia?
Absolutely not.
Would it be fair to say that it began to overwhelm your department?
We were definitely overwhelmed.
What about in your work with the GBI? To your knowledge, were they receiving the same amount of tips at that point?
Actually,
Do you have any knowledge as to whether or not the GBI was receiving tips?
Yes, they were receiving tips.
Okay. Do you know if it was the same amount you were receiving, less, more?
I would imagine it was more.
And the information that defense counsel has just asked you about, specifically a report from a deputy in Irwin County, back in 2005, well, let me ask it this way. Sitting here today, do you have any recollection of seeing that report back in 2005?
No.
Do you have any personal knowledge of when that report was made, actually written?
No.
Do you have any personal knowledge as to when that report came to be in the case file of the Ocilla Police Department?
No.
The Ocilla Police Department case file, on this case, how large is that?
You mean a number of pages or?
However, whatever description you want to give us that describes how big it is.
There's 3 or 4 folders.
Okay.
First, maybe search information.
When you say folders, do you mean these little skinny folders?
Yes.
Okay. And you say you only have 3 or 4 of these?
Maybe 5.
Okay. Everything that you recall receiving, was that turned over to the GBI?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
That's all the questions.
Follow.
yes, as you sit here today, sir, is there a report in the Ocilla Police Department's file indicating a report of a burned body in Fitzgerald Farms from November of 2005?
Yes.
That's all I have. Thank you.
No further questions.
All right, Chief, thank you for your testimony, sir. You're welcome to stay, go, whatever you'd like to do, you'll be